Hello everyone. I'm very excited to do this video. I'm going to show you what the Back to the Future movie is based off of, where the origin of the information that they made this movie. And of course this movie is about Marty getting back to the future. He has to escape in the time machine back to 1955 to avoid the Libyan terrorists. And then while he's in 1955, he has to catch the lightning strike on November 12th, 1955 at 10:04 p.m. to be able to go back to 1985. But before he catches that lightning strike, he has to make sure that his parents get back together and fall in love. Otherwise, he's going to cease to exist. So he has to get his parents back together at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. And then Marty has to catch, right after that, he has to catch his lightning strike at 10:04 p.m. And I've showed you this before, but Marty, his name means servant of Mars or god of war. The name Marty derives from the English language, originating from the combination of the first name Martin and the diminutive suffix y or ie. The name Martin itself can be traced back to the Latin name Martinus, which means of Mars or belonging to Mars. In ancient Roman mythology, Mars was the god of war, known for his fierce and aggressive nature. Therefore, the name Marty can be interpreted to mean servant of Mars, indicating a connection to the god of war. So Marty is connected to Martin, and I'll show you how this works. I came across this video on Facebook by someone I follow, and it put all the connections together. But before I show you how the Marty and Martin all connect here with how Back to the Future, what it was based off of, we're going to take a little look at Neptune, because Neptune is the sea god, right? And we have the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. Neptune wields the trident, and of course the trident was important to the World Trade Centers and 9/11 because the facade of the trade centers were made of tridents. And then the Tributan lights, several years after the events of 9/11, the Tributan lights, the trade centers were replaced with these dual beams, the blue beams, right? Because the planet Neptune, right, the blue planet. So that's why they used the blue beams, the tridents, and 9/11 is connected to the upcoming year, the horse, because, of course, Neptune is the god of horses. So I'll show you this date duration real quick here. If we go from 9/11/2001 to the beginning of the fire horse year coming up on 2/17/2026, it's exactly 1,275 weeks. And 1275 is Jesus Christ in the Latin cipher. Okay, and if you remember in Back to the Future, I don't have the slide up here, but when he goes back in time, right at the end of the runway here, right, the theater has two movies, The Atomic Kid and The Assembly of Christ, right? So there's a Jesus connection here with the DeLorean and going back to the future. Okay, so we have this connection with 9/11, Jesus Christ, the beginning of the horse year, and the name Marty and Martin. Okay, so let's take a look at this church, St. Martin in the Fields. It's in England, in Trafalgar Square, St. Martin in the Fields. It's in England, in Trafalgar Square. And I'll leave a link in the first comment and then in the description for the full video that I got this information from, so you can check it out. Okay, so St. Martin refers to St. Martin of Tours, a 4th century Roman soldier, right? We're talking about Marty. His name means servant of Mars, right? St. Martin of Tours, the 4th century Roman soldier who became a bishop and is remembered for his generosity, particularly the story of sharing his cloak with a beggar. The church's name, St. Martin in the Fields, came from the original location outside the city of London, and it is dedicated to this saint. So the iconography, the symbol for St. Martin of Tours, is him on this horse cutting his cloak to share with a beggar, right? So we have another horse connection here. And I'll show you another horse-Neptune connection here in just at the end of the video, and what else it's related to if we look at the Neptune year. But for now, we're going to look at this horse symbolism. Okay, so this is the interior of St. Martin in the Fields Church in England. There's a picture here on Wikipedia. But this is the glass. It's not stained glass, but has this little egg-shaped thing in the middle of the window here. And at the end, I'll show you how that connects here. But just for now, notice that this window has the egg in it, the transparent egg. Okay, so St. Martin in the Fields in England has this special stained glass window, or it's not stained glass, but this special window with an egg. And in the back of the church, out the back side of the church, there is a stone structure, a stone monument with the baby. And you can see here the baby's umbilical cord is attached to the rock here, to this monument. And as I pointed out earlier, and in one of my last videos, is that this whole movie series is about Marty trying to find his estate, trying to get his estate back, okay? Trying to become whole again, right? When he goes back to the future and he comes back to 1985, everything is better and everything's changed because he had to go back in time and fix something, okay? And he ended up getting his estate. And I'll show you why they called it Lion Estates. Everything that I'm going to show you here is going to perfectly coincide with what was going on in the sky at the time of the events of the movie. Okay, so in the back of the church, Martin of the Fields, they have the baby with the umbilical cord, and the umbilical cord is attached to the rock, to the stone. And the inscription around the stone, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh and lived among us." Okay, so that is what's surrounding the stone. Okay. So if you're not familiar, usually the umbilical cord, of course, is attached, in the mother, it's attached to the placenta, okay? And placenta means flat cake, all right? And here we have the birthday cake, of course. Here's a slice of the birthday cake, and here we have the placenta. And the placenta is symbolically mimicking the birthday cake, because when you arrive on this earth, the paperwork that you're given, the birth certificate, that paperwork is not for you, it's for the birth of the placenta, right? You have a organ here that's just like the cake. This is the placenta. This would be like the cake. We have the umbilical cord attached to it, like the candle, and then this white part is called the amnion, and it's like the frosting, right? And this is all what they call in the legal realm the products of conception, right? Placenta, the amnion, and the umbilical cord. All these tissues are accounted for in the definition of the products of conception, and that's what the birth certificate is for. The birth certificate doesn't apply to you. It's a receipt for the birth of the products of conception. Okay, and then the cake, right? You celebrate on your birthday. The cake, the placenta cake, is representative of all these things that are left over from the afterbirth. Okay, and this constitutes your estate. That's why the birth certificate is a land title. Okay. So here's the little illustration of what it means to go back in time. Okay. So your creation begins at fertilization. That's day one. Okay, day one is when mom and dad's chromosomes, the egg and the sperm, come together, and they each contribute 23 chromosomes for a total of 46 chromosomes, but that precedes the birth, of course, by 39 or 40 weeks, right? Depending on how long, your actual duration of pregnancy was. But this fertilization occurs within that's the first thing that happens. Your biology is created on day one, and then the zygote floats inside mom and doesn't implant into the uterus until day 7, and that's when the mother takes over and starts creating all the other products of conception that will eventually turn into everything inside mother, right? And this is what it looks like when you're inside your mother. You have the placenta, you have the amnion, which is the sac, all the fluids, the umbilical cord, of course, and that's why they're showing in this church, right? In this church, they're showing this. They're showing you inside your mother. They're showing the birth sac, right? And then they're showing the placenta, right? And this is showing that Jesus, right, is the rock of the church, right? That's why they have this connected like this, because Jesus is the rock of the church, right? Because the afterbirth comes second. It's a second coming. That's where your estate is. Okay. Okay, let's go back out here. Here's the placenta. The placenta, the part that's left over, has all these things connected to it. The amnion, the umbilical cord, and the actual placenta itself represents the cake. And then when on your birthday, you're actually celebrating the birth of the placenta. It has nothing to do with you, but this is the birth of the placenta, and you're actually blowing out your divine spark when you celebrate the birthday, because your creation long preceded the birth event, and it preceded the implantation where your mother takes over and starts making all this for you. Okay? Right? Your mother makes this for you so you can live and grow and survive inside of her, right? And then the actual birth, right? It even has on here birth, placental expulsion under the birth here. And then that organ or that expulsion, those products, are what gets assigned this certificate. And what's happening is your parents or your mother is granting that property, she's granting that land to the state, right? She doesn't know what she was doing. She granted it to the state, and she was witness to the abandoned property that was granted to the estate, or granted to the state, that should have been your estate. So you have to go get it back. And that's what the story of Back to the Future is, right? He's got to get his parents together. After that, he's got to get back to 1985 using the lightning. And then everything is much, much better when he gets back to the future. And when he's going back in time, he's going preceding his birthday, right? The fertilization event precedes his birthday. Now, if you may not know this, but Marty they give Marty a date of birth on his driver's license. And it's 6/9/1968. And the events are 11/12/1955. But he actually arrives in Hill Valley on November 5th, exactly 4,600 days before the birthday, right? And 46, that matches up with the chromosomes, right? He is going back in time, right? He has to go back ahead of the birthday, right? November 5th, 1955, obviously is ahead of his birthday. Not his birthday, the birth of his estate day, right? Because that's where you're granted the divine spark. That's your physical biology begins. And they're symbolizing that by giving him this birthday of 6/9/68. That's why it's 4,600 days, because they're showing you the chromosomes. Okay. So, to bring this full circle here, to make sure that we prove that they're actually talking about this Martin of Tours, right? This is what they're revealing here in this movie, or what they're basing this movie off of. This Saint Martin of Tours, you can see here that his feast days are November 11th or November 12th, right? And that's the exact day that Marty goes back to the future. He catches the lightning strike, right? Lightning strike, November 12th, 1955 at 10:04 p.m. and he gets sent back to the future, right? And who is the god of lightning, right? It's Zeus or Jupiter, right? Jupiter, Jove. And his symbol is the lightning bolt, the eagle or the oak tree, god of the sky. So the lightning passes through the cord and sends Marty back to the future. So let's take a look at what's going on in the sky in 1955. Go back here. Remember, Marty is Mars, and the DeLorean is Mercury, right? The winged DeLorean is Mercury. Has to go 88 miles per hour to travel through time. Marty is Mars. So in the sky at that time, we have Mercury and Mars both in Virgo. Okay? Marty gets back to 1955, exactly 4,600 days before his birth of his estate, right? 4,600. 46 is his actual biology, his chromosomal makeup from his mom and dad that had to get back together at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. And then he doesn't leave Hill Valley until the 12th, right? He's riding in the DeLorean. He's riding in the symbolic Mercury. And on the 12th, Mercury leaves the constellation Virgo, right? Goes back out. So let's go over here and take a look at Leo, because his estate, Lion Estates, where he lives, right? is connected to Leo, Leo the lion, and you can see here that just happens to be during this time in the movie that there's a Jupiter Regulus conjunction right over the heart of the lion, right? Lion estate, Jupiter, the lightning, okay? And Regulus is one of the Bohemian stars. Find it here. Regulus is one of the Bohemian stars, and it's connected to the planets Jupiter and Mars. And the plant symbol, very interestingly, is mugwort. And if you've watched my channel, you'll know that I've mentioned mugwort before, because mugwort is wormwood, and wormwood is an anti-parasite, right? And when we go to my other channel, I'll kind of show you more of the symbolism behind the anti-parasite, because you can change, right, that afterbirth. That placenta can either hinder you or help you, right? And you have to make it help you, because right now it's kind of, for most people, it's a parasite. Okay, it can be either or. Okay, but it's connected to wormwood because mugwort is wormwood. It's an anti-parasite. But Regulus, the heart of the lion, connected to Jupiter and Mars, one of the Bohemian stars, and perfectly set up from the 5th of November, 1955, to the day he leaves on the feast day of St. Martin, when Mercury leaves Virgo. And the symbolism they're going for here is this. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that ye not be partakers of her sins," right? You can replace sins with debt, "and that ye receive not of her plagues," right? Come out of her, my people. And on the 12th, he does exactly that. He comes out of her, Virgo. All the while, there's a Jupiter Regulus conjunction, and it's all about him regaining his estate, the lion estate, right? So we have this god of horses, Neptune, coming up here on 2/17/2026. We're going to enter the year of the Chinese fire horse. Okay. We're going to take a look at a Neptune year. Neptune year, 60,195 days. So let's go back here and take a look at this. 2/17/2026, the year, or the day the fire horse begins. I believe it's 4/20/28, 1861. Yep, 4/28/1861 to 2/17/2026, beginning of the fire horse year, is 60,195 days. One Neptune year, and 4/28/1861, exactly one Neptune year, almost precisely. It's only off by like 16 days or 14 days or something like that. 16 days. The beginning of the Civil War started on April 12th, 1861. So one Neptune year was 16 days into the Civil War. One Neptune year before the beginning of the fire horse. So St. Martin in the Fields Church, St. Martin of Tours rides the horse. He is a Roman soldier, right? Just like Martin and Marty are connected. Servant of Mars. At the church, they show the placenta, They show the mother. They show the biology. Right? They're showing this. Right? Here's the little sac. Right? Here's the placenta. The umbilical cord. Right? The little, they show, kind of always show it as a clear sac. Right? You've seen this many times before. This is iPet Goat. Right? They show the baby inside the little egg. Right? When the guy with the money beard is holding on to it. 2001, A Space Odyssey. Right? They show the baby. The Star Child. Even the movie Among Us, or the game. Right? And Lived Among Us. Right? And right on this guy, right, they show the right, of course, the Matrix from 1999, right? So this symbolism perfectly fits with all of this here, right? They're showing you that Jesus is the rock, right? Jesus is the rock of the church. It's the placenta, the second coming, right? The second birth. Okay, let's see here. Okay, one thing I want to show you from the Martin of Tours here, right? It shows here his symbol, St. Martin as a heraldic symbol, the coat of arms of Seneca, Slovakia. Well, here's Seneca, and Seneca, the name is derived from the word seno, meaning hay, right? Hay, oops, like straw, right? Like the straw man, you've heard that term before, okay? Like the straw man. And Jesus, right, he was born in a manger of straw. Right, he was born in a stable, right, obviously full of hay. They're alluding to the straw man, but in reality, it's the placenta or the products of conception, right? The umbilical cord, the amnion sac, and the placenta are all part of the afterbirth, and that makes up what we call cake, placenta cake. So, okay, guys, just want to show you that, show you the origin of Back to the Future, the feast day of St. Martin, the same day that Marty rides Jupiter's lightning. Thanks for watching.